Hi, this is Bob Costas, and you're listening to the ML Sports Platter.
The ML Sports Platter is back with you all over the major platforms: Spotify, Google, Apple, Stitcher, Deezer, you name it. Download, subscribe, leave feedback, and a 5-star review. Find that podcast icon wherever you get podcasts on your smartphone device. Tap it, hit search, type in ML Sports Platter, hit subscribe, and new and archived episodes of this podcast will go right to your smartphone device. Past guests include Mark Teixeira, Cal Ripken Jr., Adrian Wojnarowski, Ian O'Connor, Bob Costas, a slew of guests that I hope you have enjoyed, and there are a lot more coming in the pipeline. This podcast brought to you by Bryant and Stratton College, the Al and Angus Pub, and Sit Means Sit Syracuse. If you're in and around Central New York, go on over to David and his team. They've got the best dog training in the area. SitMeansSit.com. Syracuse, of course, consultations are available right now, so make sure you go over there. Any breed, any dog, any behavior at Sit Means Sit Syracuse, a proud ML Sports Platter sponsor. Speaking of amazing guests, let's bring in another one. He is right now an analyst for the NFL Network, a former vice president of player evaluation for the New York Football Giants, a two-time Super Bowl champ, 20 years of NFL scouting as well in Philadelphia with the Eagles and with the Bills in Buffalo. At Marc Ross on Twitter. That's at M-A-R-C Ross. At Marc Ross on Twitter. Go give him a follow. Marc Ross, welcome aboard, man. This is a treat to have you. A huge fan of you on TV. How are you?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mike. Appreciate having me.
So before the NFL draft actually happens, when do you, if at all, get draft fatigue?
Well, if you're part of the team, you don't get it. You just keep rolling with it, and you got to go until the last signing of the college free agents. So you have the 3 days of the draft, and then after that, it's really the most hectic part is after the draft when you're trying to scuffle to sign a bunch of players that you still have to fill your team out roster with that don't get drafted. And it's not until all that's over with that you kind of just get to release and breathe and everything. On the media side, it's funny just seeing it from this side, just the millions of mock drafts. I know we didn't really pay attention to that kind of stuff at teams, but now that I'm on the media side, you just see so much and, making up stories and this and that. So it gets kind of like, all right, let's go. Let's get this thing done with, and let's talk about some real stuff with football.
One thing that bothers me is when so many talking heads come out with what guys can't do. It seems like we're they're clawing for something else. He's got the size and this and whatever, but the IQ, the accuracy, this guy can't do that. The wide receiver doesn't run fast enough. It seems like there's too much of the can't do when we should hear more about the can do, right?
Well, that's when it's unfairly put on people. I think that's the problem, is that when you don't apply the same sort of standards, you don't apply the same negativity to everyone. And if we want to get specific, we're talking about Justin Fields. I mean, just the whole situation that's going on with Justin Fields now, with what he can't do. I mean, the guy has been a star his whole life. He's been a leader his whole life. He's been a winner. He's been productive. I mean, even off the field with Ohio State last year, at the forefront of getting the Big Ten to play football, all he accomplished this year, and then you see the negativity come out against him, and we go further with that, just the next black quarterback, the high-profile black quarterback that got unfairly painted with that picture, but yet we don't apply that to, let's just say, Trevor Lawrence, and we don't hear anything negative about Trevor Lawrence, and I've never really seen a prospect that no one digs into and who has serious flaws now, and no one really digs into with that. So when it's unfairly put on certain players and not others, that's when I get upset about it. But you have to really break down players with the positives and the negatives, because every player has positives and negatives, but you have to break that down and apply that standard to everyone.
We love, using the can't miss and for a future Pro Bowler, and he's a no doubt about it stud, all those things. What can't miss guys do you think reside in the first round? I mean, Kyle Pitts obviously is at the top of most people's lists, but what guys are out there who you look at right now, Mark, and you're like, yep, I'm in, bang, look test.
Yeah. So Mike, number one, there's no such thing as a can't-miss prospect. And I've never been around it, and even though those guys you think can't miss, there's always that little bit of, okay, if this goes awry in the league, that this could be the thing that brings them down. That being said, there are guys each draft you're like, all right, if this guy doesn't make it, then the whole process is flawed. You just completely missed it. And you mentioned Kyle Pitts. He's from day one that I saw him, I said, this guy's the most talented player in the draft. I have not seen a player like him, just who is so unique and rare in what he could do. Jamar Chase is in that category just as far as he should be an excellent pro. Rashawn Slater, even guys that aren't going to be top 5 picks, top 10 picks, just like an Elijah Vera Tucker, someone like that, where you look at him and say, this guy's going to play a long time and make it and be a really good player. So, I mean, you can go down the list of that, of Patrick Surtain, those sort of guys where you're like, they should make it. They really don't have a whole bunch of flaws, and those are the type of guys that you kind of rely on.
What similarities are there and what differences are there with you now being an analyst in your approach to the NFL draft, how you watch it and all that and evaluate, and then when you were inside franchises, inside the rooms, VP player evaluation of the Giants, scouting Eagles and Bills, what are the similarities and differences now and then, inside, outside the franchises?
Yeah, so when I watch tape, I watch it exactly the same, and that's my favorite thing to do. This is since I started scouting even till now. Just the actual putting that film on and breaking a player down is what they do well, what they struggle with, what they can improve on, what their impact. All that is exactly the same when I break that down. Now, the difference is where that information goes and the pressure that is on that information where you're working for teams and everything is stressed almost. Everything is important. Every single thing, every variable, when you bring this information to your team and we have meetings, is super important. Every draft pick you think is going to be, a can't miss, as you mentioned. Every single one down to the 7th round, you're feeling great about that. The pressure is on it, but every single pick is scrutinized. Now, on the media side, I can do it and break it down, and I talk about things, and I still have that same conviction, what I'm saying and believing, but it's just not that stress of, okay, if I'm wrong about what I'm saying, then this impacts your whole organization. So it's a lot less of that sort of pressure when I talk about players now, as opposed to being part of a team and the severity of each pick. But as far as just breaking it down and what I feel as far as what I'm seeing on film, it's exactly the same.
I know we have them. I know people love to hype them up and over-evaluate and all the rest, but do we really need pro days? Really?
You must have heard me in the past. So No, we don't. We do not. And there's so much importance placed on pro days and even workouts to combine. And here's the thing with the NFL, they really don't learn. This is a big flaw from the past, and there's absolutely no correlation between running a fast 40 time or jumping high in a vertical or a broad jump, a 3-cone. There really is no correlation between saying if you do those things well, you're a good football player. There really isn't. But yet we go into this draft process each year and we place so much importance on that. And that's because people are comfortable with numbers. And you can watch Devontae Smith on tape and guys can argue all day, is he fast, is he not fast? But if he runs a 40 time, then that gives people the comfort level to say, see, I either told you he's fast or he's not fast. Mm-hmm. Or in comparing two different players, you have those numbers to compare and say, yes, if a guy runs 4.3, he is faster than the guy that runs 4.6, even though if you're watching them on film, that may not be true. So the certainty of numbers gives people comfort in the NFL, but yet and still, the only correlation between, if you look at really good football players now in the NFL, they were always kind of really good football players. And it's rare that you'll see someone that was not good is all of a sudden a good NFL player, or just a workout phenom who turns into a great NFL player. It's really good football players remain good football players. And that's what I kind of base it off of. But teams, there are teams that do it better, that just rely on the film, where others rely more on the workouts, and I think that's where you get into the problems.
Marc Ross, our guest here on the ML Sports Platter, brought to you by Stanley Law Offices. Get him on Twitter at Marc Ross, NFL Network analyst and a former VP player evaluation with the New York Giants, two-time Super Bowl champion, spent a couple of decades scouting with the Eagles and the Bills. You know, in this draft, obviously the Bills at number 30 is probably the number one thing for me, just because that's my team. It's 2 hours. It's 2 hours away from here. I host a Bills podcast. On and on it goes. But right after that, I got to tell you, Mark, I've got Atlanta at number 4 as the thing that I'm watching the most. Because what do you do if you're Atlanta? You have a new regime, new GM, new head coach. Do you go a little bit longer with Matt Ryan? Do you go a little bit longer with Julio Jones? Or do you kind of turn the page a little bit here? And obviously, them losing the Super Bowl up 28-3 against New England, now looking back on it, probably caused this situation to say, hey, is it this way or is it that way? What are the Falcons doing there at number 4? To me, that may be the story of round 1.
Yeah, I agree with you. But even at 3, with San Fran, with this whole smokescreen with the Mac Jones or Justin Fields situation, where that, to me, is where it really starts, where I just cannot believe that Mac Jones would be the 3rd pick in the NFL draft. So that kind of, it starts right there when I'll be watching Thursday night of 2 weeks from now. But with Atlanta, I think it is time for them to move forward with a quarterback. But Mike, they got to have the right guy. So we talk about these guys that are up there, and you say they need a quarterback. Okay, well, it has to be the right quarterback, and it has to be the quarterback that they like, and not just take a guy. So I think if Justin Fields is there for Atlanta at 4, I think they'll take him. He's from that area. It will just kind of be that perfect match with a player and a team. Let Matt Ryan play another year, get Justin Fields comfortable, and then ready to go. Now, if there's other guys that are there, Atlanta may not be comfortable with those other quarterbacks. But if they have a 2 or 3 guys that they really like at 4, I think they have to do it, because if you're thinking you're going to, if it doesn't pan out, we'll be picking this high again, then you already know that Matt Ryan's not your guy. If you think you're going to fail with him next year to be picking high again. So you have to be thinking, we won't be picking this high again. We have to take the quarterback that we really like. And it reminds me of back when I was with the Eagles, 1999 draft, when we had the 2nd pick and we took Donovan McNabb.
Yeah, baby.
Yep. So, as you know, but Tim Couch was one, but there was Achilles Smith, there was Dante Culpepper, there was Cade McNown. And you say, well, the Eagles have to take a quarterback. Well, we did, but we had to take the right guy, and we did all the investigation on all those guys, but we liked Donovan, and there were others, the tiered where, okay, we like this guy as well, but others we just said that this guy is not worth that number 2 pick. So I'm comparing that to Atlanta, where it's the right guy for them at 4, not just any of the guys.
Donovan McNabb is my favorite Syracuse football player of all time. I remember watching him, at the Dome, and that was back when, obviously, this was let's face it, this was McNabb, Marvin Harrison. They could go into Ann Arbor and beat Michigan. They were playing on the big stage. They made huge bowl games. Keith Bullock, Donovan Darius. It was pro everywhere on the roster. It was a different time, obviously, but in that time, McNabb played it's very simple for people just to say, well, it's an option offense. It was a Kevin Gilbride crazy motion option offense with play action involved and weird reverses and all sorts of stuff going on. And McNabb was such a perfect guy for that. So 2-parter here. 1, what did it look like then as far as transferring to the NFL? And 2, considering that McNabb has been such a great hybrid quarterback, the way the game is today, shouldn't he get more credit?
Yeah, Donovan is the most underrated player that I think I've been around, and he really didn't get his due, and that was from day one with getting booed on draft day, where he just never was appreciated the way he should have been appreciated, and as much as he won for us in Philly, as much as productive as he was, and we would go into games, like we had a strong D, we had some running backs, but really never had receivers for him. But you knew going into games, like Don will win the game for us, and that's what you want out of the quarterback. And he raised the level of the whole entire offense. Just getting back to him at Syracuse, you're right. They did so much stuff there that was so different than just about anybody else. And he got dinged for that. Well, they're running this offense. He can't drop back. He can't. Well, yes, he could. If you really watched them and broke down what Donovan McNabb did at Syracuse, it was they did all kinds of stuff. Now, then he went to the Senior Bowl that year and played, and that kind of opened up people a little bit more, people's eyes of what he could do, just as far as the versatility. But you just go through the checklist of what Donovan McNabb represented. I mean, he was, as you mentioned, he won, he produced, he came from a great family, high characters, just everything you wanted in a quarterback, but still was just sort of underrated and underappreciated in the grand scheme of things. And I think definitely once his NFL career was finished, that he was still underappreciated in Philly and even in the NFL.
Talking football and NFL draft with the terrific analyst Marc Ross from NFL Network, a former player evaluation VP with the Giants and a couple of Super Bowls on the resume as well there. We'll get into that in a second. 20 years also scouting Eagles, Bills at Marc Ross on Twitter. By my count, there are still 12 teams in the NFL that have not won a Super Bowl. People don't understand it. People don't realize it. They think a lot of it is fan stuff, but let's face it, most fans have no idea what they're talking about. But there's this general go get the elite quarterback. There's 8 QBs in the draft. You got to hit one. You got to strike it. You got to keep drafting. You got to okay, you do need an elite quarterback. But Mark, you've been in this thing for so long. With the Giants, scouting Eagles, Bills, knowing the league the way you do, doing the work that you do now, watching the tape. Can you please enlighten my listeners a little bit on how hard it is? It gets thrown out all the time. Go find an elite quarterback. Yeah. They're not hanging from trees. Can you just tell my people how hard it really is to find your franchise elite guy?
It's the quarterback position is the most important position in sports by far, and it's not close. And as you mentioned, it's even if you look at it, like each year we have, 5 or 6 guys that are going to get drafted and these guys are going to be great. Well, no, actually only 1 or 2 of these guys are going to be great. And when you just look at the landscape of the NFL now, just as far as who are the great quarterbacks, you're still really only looking at about 8 guys. And that is kind of consistent each year in and year out, where there's, let's just be generous and say 10. There's 10 people walking around on this earth that you can say we're going into that season and we know that this guy can win football games and raise the level of everybody in the organization, that's the guy. And I mean, it's such a rare position. It's such rare importance in that position. And it's hard to evaluate, as we've seen in the past, where again, do they not make it because they're not good enough, or do they get misevaluated? Are they in a bad situation? Did they get hurt? Did we miss some signs as far as his ability to read defenses, or what? There's so many variables that go into scouting a quarterback, and you see so many misses up there because it is so important. Everyone wants to have that guy, and they get overvalued because of the importance of it. And I think that'll just keep going. Further down the line, that you'll still see that they're just a strong group of these are the 10 best guys in the league, and the rest are like the middle of the pack, and then the majority of guys aren't the one for you. But it's almost you have to be extremely, extremely lucky in all these factors in order to get the right person.
Do the current Buffalo Bills have staying power?
Oh, without a doubt. As long as Josh Allen keeps being Josh Allen, they definitely do. So, but and he's done an amazing transformation as far as how he has started to being one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And I got to be honest, I did not see that in Josh Allen. But as long as he keeps playing at this level or even getting better, the Bills will be there. And I mentioned Donovan, where we knew, okay, we've got Donovan McNabb. Let's put the pieces around him and let's keep winning. So Josh Allen right now is a top 5. Let's just say top 5 quarterback, and let's just keep putting pieces around him. Let's have a strong team. But going into the season, all right, we should get 9 wins with this guy, and then we have to build everything else around him to see how much further we should go. It's 10, 12 wins, whatever it may be. But yes, they are in a better position than just about the entire league, except the exception of a few quarterbacks.
What is it like? You won 2 Super Bowls with the Giants. What is it like in New York when you are the champion?
Oh, man. There's nothing like it. And we had a lot of success when I was with the Eagles. We just never got over the hump. But just when we won, it's just you're the star among stars. It's just it's amazing. It's hard to describe, really. No really feeling that you have, and to do it twice, and they were so different. But yeah, you're just walking on water all the time, and you just carry that cachet. And New York's got a lot of great teams, but just the Giants, the history of that, and the special love that this fan base has for it, it really was nothing like it.
Final couple here. I just wanted to find out from you, what kind of advice would you give someone who wants to get into scouting, who wants to get into player evaluation, at a young age right now? From your experiences, where would you guide him or her?
Yeah, you just have to, if you're in college now, try to get in sport management programs, try to just get involved as much as you can as far as working in any sort of athletic capacity. That could be at your sports information department at your college. That's what I did while I played at Princeton. Volunteer, try to get internships as much as you possibly can. And, if you've already graduated, still try to get your resume out to as many sports teams, leagues as you can to just get in the door and then learn. And then, do research on what you like to do. And it doesn't necessarily have to be scouting, but just get into anything and then try to transition from there. And always be willing to do whatever. Once you get that internship, you have to do a good job. But these jobs are scarce and they're hard to come by. So persistence, it will have to always be persistent. You're going to get a lot more no's than yeses, but you have to stay persistent to try to get it.
All right, final one for you, Mark. As you know, the NFL is obviously a copycat league. Everybody right now is trying to find the next Mahomes. It wasn't too long ago trying to find the next McVay as a head coach. What's the next thing that we're going to be hearing about that everybody's going to try to copy?
Wow, the next thing. So who's I guess I think there'll even be more innovation here with offense and with quarterbacks with this new. I think that'll be the next thing that people realize.
How's that possible, right? But
yeah. No, because and that always was like that where the lower level divisions kind of, when I would go to 1AA, FCS, FBS programs, I still call it, but they always were doing the innovative stuff. But you always would downplay people because they didn't do things like the NFL. And I mentioned how the Syracuse offense before. But now it's the NFL is copying the lower levels and what they do, because that's where really all the innovative stuff is going on, and then it trickles. It's starting to trickle up more and more now. So start looking for what they're doing at the smaller programs, and then you'll start seeing that up. Even innovative stuff that was going on in high school levels that would trickle up. So just start looking for more of that.
Well, this was outstanding stuff. Marc Ross, NFL Network, at Marc Ross on Twitter, spent 20 years scouting with the Eagles and Bills, and two-time Super Bowl champ with the New York Football Giants, the former VP player evaluation man there with the G-Men. Mark, thank you so much. Thanks for communicating with me over the social media platform there on Twitter, and continued success your way.
Sure thing, I appreciate it.
By the way, a slip of the tongue in the interview with Marc Ross, I said Kevin Gilbride. I meant Kevin Rogers, the former offensive coordinator at Syracuse when Donovan McNabb was there. And you know what happens a lot of times in the business? Names get they're in your head. There's so many names in your head at once. You know who it is, but then sometimes you have a slip of the tongue. Kevin Gilbride obviously is a guy who was the Bills' offensive coordinator for a while in the early 2000s, quarterbacks coach and OC with the Giants, on and on it goes. But I was thinking of and meant to say Kevin Rogers, not Kevin Gilbride, the OC of Syracuse, when Donovan McNabb was there. The ML Sports Platter is brought to you by our great friends at Welch & Company Jewelers. Log on to welchjewelers.com today Shop the Showcase. It is a terrific place, man. They've got awesome wedding rings, engagement rings, bracelets, watches, you name it. And they will do jewelry repair as well if you are in the greater Central New York area, right there in North Syracuse across from Lonergan Park. Welch & Company Jewelers, a proud ML Sports Platter sponsor. Tip of the cap, thank you as well to Sit Mean Sit Syracuse, Rosie's Corner, and our good friend Dave Choate. Go get him, DaveChoateArtwork.com. He's got awesome prints. I just got a couple of frames for my Bo Jackson, Ken Griffey Jr., and a couple others, which I'll be doing a lot of things with as well. Dave does awesome work. He can paint you originals as well based on request. Go ahead and visit DaveChoateArtwork.com. You can spend $10 and get a bunch of prints, 10, 15, $20. Get a bunch of prints. Go out and buy a frame for, $6, $7. Put up a couple of pictures in your man cave, and it looks unbelievable. Trust me. Dave Choate is the official artist and painter of the ML Sports Platter. Time to bring in our second guest of the podcast, a guy who I have respected for a very, very long time. He's really gotten it done in the TV world. He's an Emmy Award-winning television news anchor and reporter and producer and a blogger of Matt's Memo. CNY Central's Matt Mulcahy. Matt is also on Twitter at Matt Mulcahy. Matt, thank you so much for coming on, man. I've been obviously a big fan and respected your work for a long time. You set the standard in Central New York and beyond in the industry. So welcome in. It's really an honor to have you.
Well, thank you. That's really nice of you to say, and same back at you. I know you're like the hardest working man in Syracuse showbiz.
Well,
you're always working hard and always out there. I love it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, you gotta grind. It goes with the territory. You've been at it for a long time, and I mean, gosh, you spent 30 years in the industry. You see change. You go through change.
Yeah.
How have you adapted to the change from beginning to end in the TV industry? How it's shrunk and it's grown and it's shrunk and it's there's the digital part now. I mean, how have you gone through it yourself in all your roles?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I think remarkably, the first part of it is that TV is still here, and local TV news is still here, and in many respects is as strong or stronger than it's ever been as a really critical resource. I know it is in Syracuse, and I think that's true in a lot of other communities, especially as we saw, the newspapers fade away and turn into .com sites that didn't have the same weight that they once did, that local TV news. And research shows this too, continues to be, even in the digital age, a primary resource. Now, having said that, man, is it different, and in every sense of how you describe media, it's different, from the way things were. I don't want to make myself sound older than I am, but I did start by using a typewriter. I missed the age of film, but we were shooting on big, thick videotape that was, in a separate deck from the camera, connected by a long cable. With heavy. You needed interns at your newsroom so they could carry the heavy weight of the battery packs for the photographers. So I did see that part of the business and how it changed through decade after decade now, to the point where we could almost all do our jobs just on our iPhone, which is just incredible. The technology changes. I once said at a class up at SU, in fact, Mike, that I can't predict what the future technology will be. All I can predict is that there will be future technology. That whatever we're doing now, it is different than what we'll be able to do in the next 5 to 10 years. But who knows what that is? So you always have to be ready and be open to it, I think, is really what I've learned over the years.
If you were 22 and coming out of Ithaca, and we'll get into your days at Ithaca as well. What a great school, a great place. My sister went there. What would you do? I mean, if you wanted to be in journalism, be a TV anchor or radio or whatever the case may be, or a writer, how would you do it? Would you get out and start your own thing because all the technology is there? Would you mix modern technology and old technology ways and modern media and traditional media and go for it and apply just like you did a long time ago? How would you how would you approach it if you're 22, or even for that matter, maybe 18, in terms of making a college decision? Maybe that part of it is completely different now.
Well, I think there's two paths that you need to consider. One, first of all, whether you're 16 or 18 and you're in high school and you're interested in this arena of media and telling people information, or you're in that college age, what I do tell students now is you do not have to wait to get your job to do it. From where we were just talking about, as long as you have a phone that records sound and video, which everybody does in their pocket, you could have your own podcast. You could write your own blog. You could take your own photos and be a photojournalist. You could be on YouTube and have your own channel, and it doesn't cost anything or virtually anything, and you can articulate your own voice. Now, the two problems with that are, how do you build an audience, which is difficult when you're truly on your own and unknown, and then secondly, and obviously critically, how do you make money at it? Because we all do need to make a living, and that's part of the companion goal to doing something we love. We also hope to be able to provide for ourselves and ultimately for our families too. So I think that's what makes it difficult to be able to say to somebody, just go your own way, because you have to have your own sense of an entrepreneurial spirit, I think, to be able to say, I'm going to do an investigative 12-part podcast that ends up maybe getting put on Spotify and Apple iTunes, but maybe it won't. Maybe it won't get there. Maybe it'll never get an audience. But I think if you have that spirit of adventure, entrepreneurship, confidence in your skills and the abilities, and the great thing at that age is you have a lack of fear, then I would say that's the time to do it. Go for it. If you feel just a little more reserved than that, and we have that wide range in our business. I mean, I think we have a group of adventurous people who do what we do, but there's still a range of comfort level. Then maybe it is still best to start interviewing for that job at WSTM in Syracuse, or the equivalent of whatever market you're looking to get into, and be ready to do it all on that basis, where you're at least getting a paycheck. Where you're going to one-man band, MMJ, shoot, edit, write, post to social media, do Facebook Lives, do YouTube Live, do all those things, and then maybe still figure out something independent too. I think the short answer to your question would be, if I was doing it again, I would try to find that voice of being independent along the way.
When did you first get an interest to do what you're doing now?
I didn't grow up thinking that I was going to be a newscaster. I know that's a common story, and we've heard that type of story from people before. And sometimes I question whether people really even mean it when they say it when they're in the business later. Oh, I always wanted to do that. For me, it turned out to be, I had a confluence of interests and talents and abilities that came together to do what I ended up doing. Going to Liverpool High School, I was good academically, but I also was involved in music and plays and theater. So I had a performance side of things that I did, but I also did like to write and learn, and had a sense of curiosity. So in choosing colleges, I knew that Ithaca College was strong for communications, but it wasn't crystal clear that I wanted to go into communications. I went there as an undecided or exploratory major, as they called it. And then I started getting involved in the co-curricular activities, and I remember seeing people in my freshman year at Ithaca who were so dedicated and committed to radio and television, shooting stories and directing broadcasts, and I thought, boy, they put in a lot of hours. And then by the end of that year, I was one of those people, that it was in an audio booth, or doing a DJ shift, or manning a floor crew, or doing reports. And I really caught the bug. I interestingly had my college roommate from my freshman year, Andy Washburn, who wisely went into finance. He was also interested in communications, and we went down to the college television station to find out what it was all about. And I became immersed, and he decided it wasn't for him. And he's had a great life and career since then in a completely different direction. But it's kind of ironic that it's his encouragement in the beginning that kind of brought me down there.
Anchoring, reporting, producing, do you have a favorite?
I love doing all of them, and on a daily basis, I absolutely enjoy the moment I walk into the studio to anchor the news at roughly 4:45 every afternoon from 5 to 6:30, and then again at, say, 9:45, do the 10 o'clock and the 11 o'clock. I'm grateful for it. I find it to be energizing. It's enjoyable. It's important. In this past year with COVID, especially a year ago right now, I can't think of a time in my career where the information was more important. But the other parts of the day where I can dig into an in-depth story, work on maybe producing longer form pieces or even hour-long investigative documentaries, that is, in the long term, extremely satisfying. And I really enjoy getting immersed in the facts and details, especially telling a story that somebody maybe hasn't told in the same way before.
You know, Matt, it's unheard of to be at a single place for as long as some people have been. You know, yourself, Ted Namey, so many people like that in Central New York, the region, the country, just everywhere. And the two main reasons from my seat is, number one, the business is just brutally cruel sometimes, and the breaks that go along with it. And the other one is that most people, especially sports guys, they want to climb the ladder. They want to go from Scranton to Cuse to, Buffalo to New York City, whatever. What about you as the years have gone by? Did you ever chomp at the bit, 10 years in, 12, man, I really want to be in New York, though. I really want to be in Chicago. I really want to be in Houston.
Sure.
And looking back on it now, you've been in Central New York this whole time, succeeded greatly, obviously. You've had an unbelievable career and still more to come.
I appreciate that.
But what about the big market feel for you, Matt?
You've hit it right on the nose. That is the typical progression, and I certainly have had that itch from time to time over the years. I do think the best time to make moves like that is as soon as you can in your career, and that's true in a lot of fields, I think. And I had interviews in bigger markets and had job offers in bigger markets that maybe just weren't quite the right offer at the right time. A lot of it ends up being timing with your own life, with the job relative to where you are now. For example, if I had no success in Syracuse other than reporting, say, on Wednesday through Sunday nights or working overnights for a year, I would want to be out of here as quickly as possible if nobody saw a better future for me within this market. So I then would have jumped at any chance I would have had to move on. But that's not the way it went here, that it's gone well here. Now, there's been a couple points of transition in my career where I went from 3 to 5 and then back to 3, which turned out to be good because then 5 came into the building. So those are also pivotal times where you look around, you see what else is out there, then something works out where you can stay in your hometown and continue to build on a long career of trust and relationship that I really see at this point now paying off in dividends, and just the connection I feel to the community. I already had it because I grew up here, but there's a big difference between growing up in a community and then covering it in the news in an in-depth way. Just know so much more about it and learn so much more about it. So I think it really worked out well, and I do think that it's worth noting that there are a lot of people in markets like ours and repeated in other markets across the country that clearly have the equal talent or abilities to many of the people that did move to the New Yorks and Bostons and networks and made choices along the way to be successful and lead their life in the way they chose to. So I think that's worth noting too, that I think you're kind of alluding to that there are different paths of defining success. And I think the more you mature, the more you realize that.
Matt Mulcahy, our guest on the ML Sports Platter, at Matt Mulcahy on Twitter, the Emmy Award-winning television news anchor, reporter, and producer. Been at it for a long time in Central New York. Do you have a special place where you keep all of your awards? Is there a shelf? Is there a Matt Hall of Fame shelf?
Well, no. At home, we do have a study with a bunch of books and family pictures,
Okay.
and there's 4 glistening golden Emmy Awards there that my wife dusts once in a while. And
Just to remind you won them, huh?
Yes. My dog looks up and says, that's impressive. Can you now take me out to do my business?
Right.
But, and there's a bunch of other awards that they always end up in a box or on the back of a desk or in a pile of stuff. And what I've learned about awards is, yes, they give you recognition that hopefully you've done a good job. You've done a job that maybe in that instance was better than your competitor. That certainly feels good. It certainly is rewarding. It's great to bring the attention, the accolades to the station and the team that always goes in everything in television about a team. But it's a very fleeting satisfaction. It's not a long-term sense of like, boy, I won some awards. I'm all set, And for that matter, you speak about jobs and opportunities. I can't think of one example where somebody's won one award in our business, and then the next day, the big market, the big networker, whatever that mythical thing is, calls them up and says, "Hey, I saw you won a Press Club Award, a State Broadcasters Award, an AP Award, and you're nominated for an Emmy Award. Why don't you come and work for us? Here's all the money you need." It just doesn't quite associate like that. But it is wonderful recognition, and it does feel good when it happens.
You brought up your dog. I know you love your animals like me.
Yes.
Love your dog, and it's also a little bit closer to your heart too because you're the co-founder of the Shamrock Animal Fund. It's a not-for-profit organization. For people who don't know, it's an amazing group. It helps cover the cost of veterinary care for animals in need and for pet owners with financial limitations. How did that whole thing start? And please let my folks know where they can go and visit and how they can even donate and help out.
Oh, that's nice of you to ask that. My wife Jamie and I started that which is now 11 years ago.
Wow, already.
Yeah, it started in 2010, so I had to think about what year we're in, but it is we're in the
especially after 2020, you had to think.
Oh, I know, which is either, as they say, it's the quickest, longest year ever. Yeah, it's really hard to figure that one out.
Yeah.
But yeah, our dog then, his name was Shamrock, and he lived almost to the age of 19.
Wow. And
he never had that fatal dog illness, but as pets get older, they typically require more veterinary care. So we found ourselves in the Cornell Veterinary College waiting room a few times, and a couple of the local offices here, and we would see people having to make decisions for the benefit of their pet strictly on whether they could pay for it or not. And we all know that paying for care is part of the system, and there isn't insurance really that we typically have to pay for veterinary care like we would with medical care for people. So we decided then, and we kind of built off the momentum. Shamrock passed away, and we said, now's a good time to do something to help animals. My wife has always been an animal lover and deserves credit far exceeding my personal motivation to do it. And it's been something that we've been able to do together. And for 5 years, we ran the Healthy Pet Clinics in Syracuse, where we served people in really the poorest neighborhoods of Syracuse by giving their pets care for just $10. They got a full exam and all their shots. We had great volunteers that helped us do that. And so it's been really a labor of love, and we continue to help pay for veterinary care for people. And our website is shamrockanimalfund.com. There is at the top of the site, whether you're on your mobile phone or on a laptop or a desktop computer, a donate button where you can click and donate through credit card. That's the easiest way to do it. And we, of course, appreciate any support people want to give us.
That's great. I'll hop on actually after this and put in something for that as well. Ithaca College, let's go back a little bit.
Sure.
Ithaca, as you know, is gorgeous. They make T-shirts about it.
Yes.
My sister went there. Amazing place. And you went there and you shared a little bit about what you do if you were 22 today, let's say, going into the business. But take me back to those days a little bit more, dive in. What are some of your best memories? And also, I just had Karl Ravitch on from ESPN, who is just one of my favorites in the industry. I've loved why he's just so great. And he brought you up as well in that interview. So how about your relationship with him when that started, and some memories, just kind of rope it all together from IC?
Well, there was a point where I unfortunately, Carl went into sports, but when I was the news director for the college TV station, and I was in charge of our election night coverage, and I was also in charge of deciding who would anchor the election night coverage, and I picked Carl to be the male anchor, and along with that, we also had a talented young woman who was co-anchoring with them. But Carl's ability to do the job that we do, regardless of topic, without a script in particular, made him particularly agile and able to cover an election night, which was something I'm pretty sure he hasn't done since. Even though we also then worked together at WBNG in Binghamton, and I was in his wedding, and he was at my wedding.
Wow.
and he was as a lot of first sports jobs are, he did do some news coverage as well as doing sports. So I tried to drag him into news, and quite honestly, at the time, I was dabbling in doing sports too. I also did Ithaca College football on the radio, and basketball games and baseball games, and so the two of us spent a lot of time together. We still spend time together, although I wish we lived next door to each other instead of him in Connecticut and me here. We were just talking a couple months ago. Sadly, one of our friends from Ithaca College recently passed away from cancer, and so Carl had texted me, and I said, you know what, this isn't one where the text back works. I got to pick up the phone and actually have a conversation. So hopefully once we're all vaccinated, the pandemic passes, we'll be on the golf course together again and having a lot of laughs. It always feels like no time has passed when we get together.
Yeah, when you guys do that, if you need a fourth, you got my number.
Absolutely.
Couple more for Matt Mulcahy here at CNY Central, of course, and on Twitter at Matt Mulcahy, the Emmy award-winning television anchor, reporter, and producer here on the ML Sports Platter. You can visit cnycentral.com for more as well. You know, it's funny with Carl, the studio host part is where I like him the most for Baseball Tonight. I just think that's awesome. He's also phenomenal at play-by-play, and one of the play-by-play moments that he now has on the resume is the John Gillen bank shot. Right. Syracuse beating Duke. He has a bunch of those moments. You know, the play-by-play guys through the years in sports, the Vin Scullys and the Al Michaels and Bob Costas, and on we go. They have their moments. You know, do you believe in miracles? Bob Costas calling Jordan's final shot against Utah. Those type of things. Many anchors on camera have big-time moments as well, big-time casts where you just knock it out of the park, and if you look at a highlight reel, that comes up for you. What does your highlight reel look like at your height? Do you remember a specific cast or a story or something where not just recognition from other people, but where you felt like that was your best moment?
Well, three things come to mind over a period of time for anchoring. One first would be the blizzard of '93, which goes back a few years, and there's, I think the video that we produced afterwards is on YouTube, so maybe that's why it lives on. But it truly was the storm of the century. I was anchoring countless hours that weekend, and it really fits that bill of when you really know the community needs the information. They're thirsty for the information. They're in tune with you because they trust you and want to know what's going to happen next. We're a little concerned. We need somebody we can trust. And so with that same theme, two more things come to mind. 9/11. Maureen Green and I were anchoring together at WTVH on that day, and we really just sat in the studio and intermixed our local coverage with the watching the towers fall, the network coverage, and experiencing it side by side with our community, which, as you know, is really just a 1 hour flight or a 4 hour drive from Manhattan, and we felt that so deeply. And again, shared experience that as anchors, yes, we were giving important information, but we were also sharing in the emotion of that day. And then I had that same feeling truly just a year ago. It was St. Patrick's Day, which was a Tuesday, March 17th of 2020, and it was the first night that Jimmy Fallon and The Tonight Show were no longer going to be live because they weren't going to have a studio audience. So we expanded our 11 o'clock news to an hour, really on the front end of the pandemic. And I remember having a sense, I mentioned the studio and walking into the studio and how much I enjoyed doing that. Well, that night I can remember walking out of the studio with a big, like, whew, boy, am I glad that's over, because it was an emotional, scary evening. But as a news anchor, you kind of feel like you got to keep it together. You got to let people know that you are right there with them and how you feel. But you also have to be able to maybe offer a bit of a hug or hold a hand to get people through it. So those things come to mind immediately. Answering your question about memorable anchoring events, and there's a common thread, I think, through all three of those over a period of a long time.
Final one for you: when the camera goes dark and you're done with another cast delivering to living rooms across central New York. Yeah. What do you hope people say about you?
I don't know if anybody's ever asked me that question before, Mike, and I can tell you honestly, I haven't given it much thought. And it's interesting that you ask it today, because I just saw Kobe Bryant talking about that on ESPN today. Because Jordan's going to be announcing his Hall of Fame induction, and that story was developing, and they pulled out some Kobe video, which I guess I would borrow a little bit from, because I felt like I could relate to what he was saying, in that, we all know if we're blessed with a certain amount of talent to do what we do, but whatever talent you're given doesn't really matter if you don't work hard at it every day. And I think that I've lived my career along that same line, that I don't want people to think that I only anchor the news and show up to say, here's Wayne with the weather. It's more important that people realize that I cared about the community. I wanted to tell stories about the community, and that it meant something to them, and it meant something to me.
Well, this was outstanding. I knew it would be. Looked forward to it once we were texting, and I was able to get you on. Matt Mulcahy, at Matt Mulcahy on Twitter. An unbelievable career still going. CNY Central, CNYCentral.com, anchor, reporter, producer, award-winning across the board through the years. Matt, thank you again for coming on, and you helped set the standard in media across Central New York and beyond, as far as I'm concerned. So, somebody that a lot of people, including myself, have watched for a long time and looked up to and really respected a lot of your work, man. You're one of a kind.
Well, thank you, Mike, and I really appreciate you asking, and I've enjoyed the conversation. And I'm going to catch up now on that Carl Ravitch podcast.
The ML Sports Platter is brought to you by the Allen Angus Pub, home of the best darn Angus burger in town. Gift cards are available if you are in and around Central New York. Get to the pub for awesome burgers, the Power Play Burger, and many, many others. They have homemade French onion soup. The place is to die for across the board. Entrees galore. Specials come out every week. Awesome beers in the bottle, in the can, and on tap as well at the Al and Angus Pub, home of the best darn Angus burger in town. A big tip of the cap thank you as well to Barks and Rec Doggy Daycare, the Vince Aguirre Consulting Group, Stanley Law Offices, and your State Farm agent, Matt Graham. Get a free rate quote today and find out what the rate drop is all about at Matt Graham's State Farm location, South Bay Road in North Syracuse. And he can quote you as well if you're anywhere in New York State. So make sure you get on over to SyracuseInsuranceAgent.com or just pop in and say hello to Matt Graham, South Bay Road. Insurance products include auto, home, property, business, life, health, and more. And they're open Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So stop by after hours are available by appointment with Matt Graham, your State Farm agent, the official insurance agent of the NL Sports Platter. What a podcast this was, chatting with two of the best in the business. We had Marc Ross on talking some NFL draft and football, his career, and much more, and also the terrific CNY Central anchor, producer, and reporter, Matt Mulcahy. I'm Mike Lindsley. Thank you for listening to the NL Sports Platter. Download, subscribe, leave feedback, and a 5-star review where podcasts are found in your smartphone device. And hit me on Twitter at Mike L Sports. As I always tell you, enjoy the games.